You've been carrying a quiet fear in your heart, one you don't always say out loud. A fear that maybe God is upset with you. That maybe the delays, the exhaustion, the tears you wipe away in private are signs of disappointment. You look at what hasn't worked, what slipped through your hands, what you couldn't hold together, and you wonder if heaven is shaking its head at you. But let me tell you something gently and clearly: God is not angry with you. What you're experiencing is not punishment. It's healing. Healing often feels uncomfortable before it feels freeing. Healing can look like rest when you thought you should be running. Healing can feel like silence when you were expecting applause. Healing can slow you down when you were ready to push harder. And because it doesn't look dramatic, because it doesn't come with instant results, you start questioning it. You start thinking, if God was pleased with me, wouldn't things be easier by now? But ease is not the evidence of love. Growth is, transformation is. And transformation almost always requires a breaking open before it becomes a building up. There are seasons when God doesn't correct you with loud discipline, but with quiet care. He doesn't confront you with anger. He surrounds you with patience. He lets things fall apart not to shame you, but to release you from what you were never meant to carry. Some of what you lost wasn't taken from you. It was lifted off you. Some doors closed not because you failed, but because you were bleeding trying to keep them open. Healing begins when God removes what keeps reopening the wound. You've been hard on yourself. You replay conversations. You relive moments. You ask yourself what you should have done differently. You punish yourself with regret, as if beating yourself up could somehow rewrite the past. But God is not standing over you with a list of mistakes. He's standing beside you, tending to the parts of you that have been overworked, overlooked, and overwhelmed. He knows where you're tired. He knows where you've been strong for too long. He knows where your smile has been a mask. Sometimes healing looks like God giving you permission to rest without guilt. You thought faith meant never stopping, never questioning, never feeling weak. But real faith knows when to lie down and trust that God is still working even when you're still. Rest is not rebellion. Rest is not quitting. Rest is sometimes the most obedient thing you can do when your soul is worn thin. God is not offended by your need to pause. He designed you with limits, and honoring them is not a lack of trust. You might be in a season where you feel exposed. Old emotions are surfacing. Old pain is being touched. Things you thought you were over are suddenly back in front of you. That doesn't mean you're going backward. That means healing is reaching deeper layers. Healing doesn't just address what you can see. It goes after what you buried to survive. And when God heals, He heals thoroughly. He doesn't rush the process just to make it look good on the outside. There are lessons you're learning now that comfort could never teach you. Compassion is being formed in you. Discernment is being sharpened. Strength is being redefined. You're learning that you don't have to prove your worth by exhaustion. You're learning that saying no doesn't make you selfish. You're learning that being chosen doesn't mean being overused. These lessons are not signs of rejection. They are signs of preparation. You've been wondering why God hasn't answered the way you expected, why prayers feel unanswered, why progress feels slow. But healing answers don't always arrive as sudden breakthroughs. Sometimes they arrive as peace in the middle of uncertainty. Sometimes they arrive as boundaries you finally have the courage to set. Sometimes they arrive as clarity about what you can no longer tolerate. God is healing you by changing how you respond, not just what you receive. You are not being corrected, you are being covered. You are not being pushed away. You are being drawn closer. God is gentle with you because He knows how much you've already endured. He knows the battles you didn't announce. He knows the nights you held it together for everyone else and fell apart alone. And instead of condemning you for being tired, He meets you right there in your humanity. This season may feel quiet, but quiet doesn't mean empty. It means focused. It means intentional. It means God is doing detailed work. He is aligning things you couldn't align on your own. He is healing how you see yourself, how you see others, how you see Him. He is removing the false belief that you have to suffer to be worthy, that you have to struggle to be spiritual, that love must always hurt to be real. What you're becoming requires tenderness, not tension. It requires wholeness, not hustle. And God cares more about your heart than your performance. He's not measuring your value by your output. He's restoring your joy, your trust, your sense of safety. He's teaching you to live from love, not for approval. So if things feel slower, if your energy feels lower, if your emotions feel closer to the surface, don't assume you're failing. You might be healing. If you feel more sensitive, More aware, more honest with yourself. That's not weakness. That's health returning. God is not angry with you for needing time. He is patient enough to walk with you through every layer of recovery. And even now, in this place where you're learning to breathe again, where you're learning to let go, where you're learning to receive care instead of constantly giving it, God remains close, steady, and intentional, doing the kind of work that doesn't rush but restores, that doesn't accuse but renews, that doesn't break you down to shame you, but opens you up so you can finally be whole again. What feels like silence, slowness, or even discomfort in your life is not a signal of divine anger. It is often the language of healing. We are conditioned to think that if something hurts, if progress feels delayed, if answers don't come quickly, then something must be wrong. We assume that approval looks like speed and blessing looks like ease. But healing has never followed the rules of convenience. Healing moves at the pace of safety, not pressure. It unfolds according to wisdom, not urgency. And when God chooses to heal rather than rush, it can feel confusing to those who mistake noise for nearness and activity for attention. There are moments when you are praying for relief, but what you receive instead is rest. You are asking for clarity, but you are met with quiet. You are pushing for resolution, yet everything seems to slow down. In those moments, it is easy to believe that God has turned away, that your prayers have somehow irritated heaven. But healing does not shout, it whispers. It does not demand performance, it invites surrender. Silence is not abandonment, slowness is not rejection. These are often signs that something fragile is being handled with care. Pain has a way of making us interpret everything as punishment. When something goes wrong, we immediately search our past for a reason, a mistake, a flaw that explains why we are here. We replay conversations, decisions, and seasons, trying to locate the moment that caused God to withdraw his favor. But healing does not come to accuse, it comes to uncover. It reveals where you have been overextended, overburdened, and overexposed. It brings to light wounds that were ignored because survival demanded strength instead of honesty. Sometimes what you call delay is actually protection. God slows you down because moving at your old speed would reopen wounds that are still closing. He quiets the noise around you because too many voices interfere with the delicate work happening within you. Healing requires space, it requires margins. It requires a level of gentleness that chaos cannot provide, and when life feels unusually quiet, it may be because God is creating an environment where your soul can finally exhale. Discomfort is often misunderstood as correction, but many times it is simply adjustment. When a broken bone is set, it hurts not because the doctor is angry, but because alignment is taking place. In the same way, emotional and spiritual healing can feel invasive. Old habits are challenged, old coping mechanisms no longer work, old distractions lose their power. This can feel like loss, but it is actually release. God removes what numbs you so he can restore what strengthens you. There are layers to healing that success and business can never reach. When life slows down, buried emotions surface. When distractions fade, unanswered questions rise. When routines change, hidden fears emerge. This is not regression, this is depth. Healing goes after the roots, not just the symptoms. It touches the places you avoided because acknowledging them felt too risky at the time. God does not heal you by pretending those places don't exist. He heals you by meeting you there without condemnation. It is important to understand that God's care is not always expressed through instant change. Sometimes his care looks like patience with your process. He allows you to feel what you feel without rushing you to fix it. He gives you room to grieve without pressuring you to be grateful. He lets you ask hard questions without demanding perfect faith. This is not indulgence, it is wisdom. Healing that is rushed often has to be repeated. Healing that is honored has the power to last. When progress feels slow, it is tempting to compare your journey with someone else's breakthrough. You see others moving ahead while you seem stuck, and you assume something must be wrong with you. But healing is personal. What took someone else a moment may take you a season. Not because you are weaker, but because your story carries different weight. God customizes restoration. He knows exactly how much you can handle and exactly how much time each layer requires. Even the discomfort you feel now serves a purpose. It teaches you awareness. It sharpens your discernment. It trains you to listen to your body, your spirit, and your limits. Healing often rewires how you respond to pressure, how you define strength, how you measure worth. It invites you to live from wholeness instead of striving, from peace instead of proving, from trust instead of fear. And in this quiet, deliberate work, God is not expressing disappointment, but demonstrating care that is attentive enough to notice what truly needs repair. There is a quiet misconception that faith is proven by how much you can endure without stopping. Somewhere along the way, strength became confused with exhaustion, and commitment became measured by how much of yourself you were willing to lose in the process. Many people believe that slowing down means falling behind, that rest is a reward you earn after everything is finished, and that needing a pause somehow reflects a lack of trust. But healing exposes this misunderstanding and invites a deeper truth. Growth does not come from constant striving, but from learning when to release, when to rest, and when to redefine what strength truly means. Rest is often treated like weakness because it interrupts productivity. It forces you to confront what you have been using activity to avoid. When you stop moving, you start feeling. When you stop doing, you start noticing. This is why rest can feel uncomfortable. It removes the distractions that kept your pain quiet. But rest is not the absence of faith, it is an expression of it. It says that you trust God enough to believe that the world will not collapse if you stop holding everything together. It acknowledges that you are not the source of your own provision, protection, or progress. Release is another part of healing that is often misunderstood. Letting go can feel like failure, especially when you have invested time, emotion, and identity into something. You tell yourself that if you just try harder, if you stay longer, if you give more, things will eventually change. But healing teaches you that persistence without discernment leads to depletion. There are things you are holding on to out of habit, not calling. There are roles you are playing out of fear, not purpose. Release is not giving up, it is making space for what can actually sustain you. Redefining strength is perhaps the most challenging part of the process. Strength has long been associated with self-sufficiency, with never needing help, with absorbing pressure without complaint. But healing reframes strength as honesty. It allows vulnerability to become a form of courage. It honors the ability to say, "This is too much," without attaching shame to that admission. True strength is not found in how much you can carry alone, but in how wisely you choose what to carry at all. Healing also forces you to confront the belief that your value is tied to your output. When rest enters your life, productivity often decreases, and that can trigger anxiety. You begin to question your worth. You wonder who you are without constant achievement. But healing separates identity from performance. It reminds you that you are valued for who you are, not for how much you accomplish. When you stop striving, you discover that love does not diminish. It remains steady, patient, and present. In releasing and resting, you may face resistance from others who benefited from your overextension. Not everyone will understand your boundaries. Some may interpret your pause as distance or disinterest, but healing requires discernment over approval. You cannot heal while constantly explaining yourself. You cannot rest while still trying to meet every expectation. Growth sometimes requires disappointing others in order to remain faithful to what is happening within you. As you slow down, you begin to notice patterns that were invisible before. You recognize the cycles that kept you exhausted. You see how often you said yes out of obligation rather than alignment. You become aware of how fear disguised itself as responsibility. This awareness is not meant to condemn you. It is meant to empower you. Healing gives you the clarity to choose differently, to move with intention rather than impulse. Redefinition changes how you approach your future. You no longer chase every opportunity. You evaluate whether it aligns with your values. You no longer equate business with importance. You prioritize peace. You begin to understand that sustainability is more valuable than speed. What lasts is not built in haste but in health. Healing teaches you that a slower, steadier pace often leads to deeper impact. Letting go of constant striving does not mean abandoning ambition or purpose. It means allowing those things to be guided by wisdom rather than pressure. It means trusting that growth can happen without burnout and progress can occur without panic. Healing reshapes your priorities not by removing desire, but by refining it so that what you pursue no longer costs you your well-being. There is a deep difference between correction and restoration, and understanding that difference changes how you interpret what you are going through. Correction focuses on behavior, on what you did wrong, on what needs to be fixed immediately. Restoration focuses on the heart, on what has been damaged, neglected, or worn down over time. Many people assume that difficult seasons exist because God is displeased and trying to discipline them, but often what is actually happening is far more tender. God is not standing at a distance pointing out failures. He is drawing near to rebuild what has been quietly breaking inside. Restoration begins where performance ends. It does not start with demands or expectations, but with presence. God sees the places where you kept going even when you were empty, where you smiled while feeling unseen, where you stayed faithful while feeling unsure. Those moments did not go unnoticed, and they do not require punishment, they require care. When God restores, He does not rush you into better behavior, He invites you into deeper honesty. He allows you to feel what you have been suppressing so healing can reach the root, instead of just managing the surface. In seasons of restoration, behavior may change slowly, and that can feel unsettling. You may notice that you no longer have the same energy, the same urgency, the same tolerance for things you once accepted. This is not rebellion or laziness, it is alignment. God restores by recalibrating your desires and boundaries. He adjusts how you respond to pressure and how you define responsibility. This inner shift matters more than outward appearances because lasting change flows from healed motives, not forced discipline. Many people fear restoration because it requires vulnerability. Correction allows you to stay guarded. Restoration asks you to open up. It asks you to admit where you are tired, where you are confused, where you are unsure. It removes the pressure to pretend and replaces it with permission to be real. God is not threatened by your questions or disappointed by your weakness. He already knows the truth of your heart, and restoration begins when you stop hiding from it. This process also redefines your relationship with guilt. When behavior is the focus, guilt becomes a motivator. You try to do better so you can feel better. But restoration dissolves guilt by addressing its source. It helps you see that some of what you blamed yourself for was never yours to carry. It separates responsibility from shame. God restores by lifting burdens, not by adding more weight. He teaches you to live from grace rather than constantly striving to earn relief. As restoration takes place, you may notice that your priorities shift. What once felt urgent now feels optional. What once felt necessary now feels draining. This is not loss, it is clarity. God restores the heart by realigning it with truth. He removes attachments that were built out of fear and replaces them with convictions rooted in peace. You begin to choose differently, not because you are trying to be better, but because you are becoming healthier. Restoration also heals how you see God Himself. In behavior-focused faith, God can feel distant, demanding, or easily disappointed. In restoration, He becomes present, patient, and deeply involved. You begin to trust that He is for you, not against you. You stop interpreting every challenge as judgment and start recognizing guidance, protection, and care. This shift brings freedom because you are no longer living under constant pressure to get it right. There is a tenderness in restoration that discipline alone can never produce. It nurtures trust, safety, and intimacy. God does not restore you to send you back into the same patterns that depleted you. He restores you to teach you how to live differently. He heals your sense of worth so that obedience flows from love, not fear. He rebuilds your confidence so that service comes from fullness, not obligation. This kind of work takes time because hearts are not mechanical. They carry memories, disappointments, and unspoken hopes. God honors this complexity. He does not rush healing just to make you functional again. He restores you so that you can be whole. Behavior may change as a result, but it is the fruit, not the focus. The focus remains on renewing joy, rebuilding trust, and restoring peace, because a healed heart naturally produces a transformed life. What all of this comes down to is a single, steady truth that reshapes how you see yourself, your season, and your relationship with God. You are not walking through anger, you are walking through care. What feels slow is intentional. What feels quiet is attentive. What feels uncomfortable is not meant to shame you, but to restore you. God is not focused on fixing your behavior as much as He is focused on healing your heart, because He knows that when the heart is made whole, life begins to realign naturally. The pauses, the boundaries, the emotional awareness, and even the vulnerability you are learning to embrace are not signs of weakness. They are evidence that something deeper and more sustainable is being formed within you. You are learning that faith is not proven by exhaustion, that love is not measured by sacrifice without limits, and that strength does not require constant survival mode. This season is teaching you how to live from peace instead of pressure, from trust instead of fear, and from wholeness instead of striving. God is gently rewriting the definitions you once lived by, replacing guilt with grace, urgency with wisdom, and self-blame with compassion. Nothing about this process is accidental, and nothing about it means you have failed. Even now, while you are still becoming, still learning, still healing, God remains close, patient, and intentional, working not to tear you down but to restore you completely, because God is not angry with you. He is healing you.